Hello and welcome to the Modern Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Billy Tarasio, attorney and owner of Modern Law, joined today by Kathryn O'Connell, also goes by Kitty, straight out of Ireland, right?
Yes.
And she is one of the attorneys here at Modern Law. And today we're going to be talking about lessons learned as a divorce attorney and how it's changed your impressions and your insights on dating. So fun. Kathryn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So tell me, you are the one who came up with this topic. You are a young attorney. How long have you been doing divorce and family law now?
I've been doing divorce and family law. I'm going into my second year now.
Mhm. All right. So I'm sure this last year has been, kind of traumatic almost.
I feel like it was a very high growth year for sure. I was thrown into a lot of different situations where I had to think on my feet, learn as I went. And just looking back from a year ago today, I have learned so much and have so many more insights into both how to approach personal relationships, dating relationships, advice I'd give to friends and family in terms of dating, marriage, like the kind of how to's, what to do, what not to do. For sure, I have
Yeah.
a lot more insight.
There is a lot of vicarious trauma that happens in the beginning of a divorce attorney's career because you're not yet desensitized. And so you're living and feeling the heartbreak of your clients acutely.
Absolutely. I have had a lot of nights where I'm tossing and turning, thinking about my clients' cases, both sometimes from the legal aspect, trying to work through a problem. And I just can't sleep because I'm thinking about it. And then I've also had cases where I've lost sleep because of just the stories that I've heard and like the trauma my clients are going through, their kids are going through. I think one of the most painful situations that I witnessed is so in Arizona, the courts want to promote both parents' relationships with the children, and the judges go under the assumption that it's in the child's best interest to have like meaningful continuing contact with both parents throughout the child's life. And generally that is a good thing. Generally it's helpful and it's in the child's best interest, but sometimes you get into situations where one parent may be abusing the child. And in this particular case that I'm thinking of, there is physical abuse of the child. The client came to me in crisis, was very concerned about her child. We ended up getting emergency orders. Dad's parenting time was limited, but he was still given parenting time. And as a result of this, child was afraid dad would retaliate. He completely refused to go to dad's parenting time. And my client was in a really tough position because her options were either violate the court orders and keep her child safe or potentially put her child at risk, force her kid to do something he was unwilling to do and be in compliance with the court orders. In situations like that, there's really no good answer, good solution.
No. So, in that case, can I ask roughly how old was the child?
He's about 10 years old.
Okay. And did he end up going to any parenting time?
No, he has not. He's refused to go to parenting time, but dad hasn't. He's been quote unquote sleeping on his rights. He hasn't done anything to enforce the parenting time. So we've just been, walking on eggshells, proceeding very carefully and encouraging the child to develop a relationship with dad, asking, will you meet in a public place? Will you go to ice cream with him? Will you have a phone call? Doing what we can to try to promote that relationship between dad and child without putting the child at risk of harm.
Okay. So, in that case, which is so common, people have to deal with that decision, what you just said, every day. If they have they believe that sending their children to parenting time is dangerous and maybe their kid doesn't want to go. And they have to decide, do I violate a court order or do I potentially put my child in danger? Our job, I think, is to mitigate the risk to the client that they will face backlash from the court for whatever decision they make, right?
Absolutely.
So when you are trying to encourage this contact, are you emailing dad? Are you creating a record of your attempts to facilitate parenting time?
Absolutely. Yes, I always tell my client their role is, or one of their goals is, right, you can't control how other people act. You can't control what other people do. All you can do is take responsibility for your actions. And so do what you can to promote the relationship with dad and child and document those attempts. Have
Yeah.
text messages with dad saying, like, offering meeting in a public place, create, like, come up with solutions. And it is hard because my clients, like, I feel like I'm putting more effort into dad's
Right.
relationship with the kid than dad is, but it's also helping create protection to defend against future allegations, perhaps of contempt, withholding, alienation. A lot of times I see those types of claims in response to a situation where a child is resistant to going to one parent's parenting time. And so the parent who's the quote unquote like preferred parent, the one who has the closer relationship with the child, I always tell them to make sure they protect themselves and create documentation, create a record showing that they're doing what they can to promote dad and child's. And this is just in that one case, those were the dynamics that is dad and child, but it can obviously be in reverse.
Got it. Yeah, I think that that's really, really good advice. It comes up so often. I hope that people can really think about if you're in that situation, how to make sure that you're protecting everyone involved because it is so tricky.
Absolutely.
So, I want to talk for a minute about your new insights on dating that have come from your experience as a divorce attorney. What have you learned? What are you now seeing as red flags and green flags?
Absolutely. So I would say first and foremost, the main lesson I have come away from this past year of working as a divorce attorney with is that who you choose to be your partner and who you choose to be the parent of your children is the single most important decision you can make in life. It's more important than a job. You can change careers, you can change locations, but and you can obviously change relationships. But once you marry someone, there's a lot that goes along with making those changes. Divorce is a very long, expensive process, and it can have lifelong implications. And same with having children. I think a lot of people think, okay, I have to co-parent with this person until the kids are 18. But once a child turns 18, they'll still have a relationship with your co-parent, and you'll likely, see your co-parent at weddings, graduations, the birth of grandchildren. Like this person will be in your life. So you're creating a lifelong connection with who you choose to have children with. So it's super important to go into that decision mindfully and having eyes wide open to who you're choosing to be your lifelong partner. And it's hard because people are working with incomplete information when they're choosing who to marry. Most people get married in their 20s or 30s. They're young, they're still growing, they're changing, and their partner is also growing, changing. So you don't always have all the information at the time you're making this decision. So if you quote unquote chose wrong, I don't believe in that. I think you chose right at the time and it just turned into something that later on wasn't right. But it's a very important decision. So, in terms of red flags and green flags, one red flag would be, for instance, if you're on a first date with someone and they say, I love you, you might be like, oh my gosh, I'm so flattered. They love me. They see how great I am after 2 hours of knowing me. But that could be love bombing. And a lot of times, what I see in situations where there ends up being some kind of domestic violence is the relationship starts off super romantic, a whirlwind romance. The parties are, it's very exciting. It's a rush. You fall head over heels. And sometimes as a result of that, that is the result of love bombing. And so that is one thing I'd be aware of if it's a lot very quickly. Another red flag would be potential, like if your partner is controlling. And a lot of times this is hard to see because it can be very insidious. But if it can start off with like checking your phone or asking where you're going, who you're with. And I think it's different to have like a natural curiosity about your partner, right? When you're dating, you're getting to know someone, you want to know who they are, what their values are, what their hobbies, interests, friends, like you're getting to know the full person. But there's a difference when those questions become, kind of controlling, or it feels more like an interrogation than a natural, like, how was your day? And so that is one thing I'd want people to be aware of too, is the control. And then the third thing I would say is probably related to like money and finances, which can go along with control. But in the vast majority of situations where there is some kind of domestic violence, and domestic violence does not have to be physical. I think that's what most people think of when they think of DV. They'll think of that my partner punched me or they pushed me or something along those lines. But a lot of times it doesn't always start out with physical violence. A lot of times it starts out more insidious with control, with manipulation. And so in the vast majority of cases where there's domestic violence, there's some form of financial abuse or financial control. And so I think it's really important for all people to have their own money, their own assets. We're like personal finance is personal. People do different things with their finances, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's good for people to have access to money because money can help create options and help create choices in life. And so you can have, if you have access to your own money, you'll have a choice to potentially leave the relationship if it does become unhealthy or if it does become toxic or abusive. And so just making sure that you have access to a bank account, to a credit card, and that you have your own emergency fund if something were to happen.
Yeah, those were all fantastic insights. I definitely did not fully comprehend that ch- when you choose to get married, I just want to reiterate what you said. It will have the single most impactful, it's the single most impactful decision on your life and your future. It is a decision that cannot be understated, the importance of it. And most of us are making that decision very young. So it's easy to get it wrong. And I also really appreciated the fact that you said, you're working with incomplete information about yourself, about your partner, about life. And so we all got to do the best we can. The other thing that you said that is very interesting. So you were talking about relationship dynamics and how a relationship dynamics need to be healthy. And it's not healthy if somebody is love bombing. It's not healthy if somebody is controlling, but it's also not healthy if you have a power imbalance, and a power imbalance and a money imbalance often go hand in hand.
Absolutely. I feel like this is a little blunt, but I do feel like whoever has money has power, right? And it's like money, because money can help buy options. It can buy freedom.
Right.
And if one party is, for instance, the like main income earner, the other party might feel less empowered to make decisions. Or sometimes it's like if one person is making all the financial decisions in a relationship, you're and like the other person is naturally giving up some of their power to the other person who is the like quote unquote decision maker in that relationship.
So, what are your thoughts on young couples who have kids and they decide it is best for their family and their children and financially for one parent, usually mom, to stay home? What would your advice be?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And that is very much the situation that my parents were in. So I come from a big Irish Catholic family. My parents had five children and they were pretty young. They're 17 when they met, 22 when they got married, and then 27 when they had my oldest sister. So they were right, a young family, had a lot of kids. And my mom was a nurse. My dad worked in finance. And it got to the point where my mom's salary as a nurse was less than the cost of childcare. And so they were like, naturally, for our family, it makes more financial sense for one parent to stay home. And since my mom made less than my dad, it made more sense for her to be the stay-at-home parent. And so that's what they did. And it worked out luckily for them. They've just celebrated their 38th wedding anniversary. So it's been good. But they did, I feel like my mom took a risk for sure by becoming a stay-at-home parent. She always made sure that she kept up with her education to do her continuing education. And I remember as a kid, I'd ask her, like, why are you studying? Like, oh, why are you taking these tests? And she's like, well, I worked really hard to get my degree. And if something were to ever happen to your dad, I want to be able to go back into the workforce so I can take care of our family. And so that is one option, is to keep up with your education, keep up with your skills. And the world is always changing. The job market is always changing. And so keeping up with current skills, I think, is something that's really important for everyone, even parents who maybe aren't actively in the paid workforce. I think it's really important to have some sort of skill you can fall back on or an education you can fall back on if needed to be able to support yourself. I personally believe it's really important for everyone to have the ability to support themselves if needed. All relationship, or not all relationships, but all marriages end in one of two things. They all end in either death or divorce. And you need to be prepared for that if you are the perhaps like the stay-at-home parent and your spouse is the income earner in the family. They could pass away. You could get divorced. It happens to, I think divorce is maybe like roughly half of couples, their marriages end in divorce. So it's very common. I know no one wants to think about that when they're getting married and they're in love, but it is a very real possibility in a lot of relationships. And so I would recommend, yeah, keeping education skills current, having a way to support yourself. And if you have the ability to at least work part-time to try to do that, I think it's important to have some sort of income and or ability to earn income for everyone. One of my friends recently told me a very sad story about one of her sorority sisters from undergrad. And she was a young mom. She has two little kids. She was a stay-at-home mom. Her husband ended up passing away in a car crash. And so she overnight became a single mom with no income, from having a husband who made, a good living to no income overnight. And something that happened, which even me as a divorce attorney, I hadn't considered, was she was an authorized user on his credit card and didn't have access to her own credit card. And as a result of that, when he passed away, obviously his credit card went away. And she went out to apply for a credit card and she wasn't able to get one because she didn't have any income. And so
Right.
having an ability both to get income and some source of income, if you can make it work, is really important for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Maintaining your credit, maintaining your skills, all very good tips. Now, Kathryn, you do not present as the typical lawyer. You present more like a kindergarten teacher or a yoga instructor. Like your vibe is so different from most lawyers. And I absolutely love it. Judges love it. You're getting incredible results in the courtroom. Your managing attorney described you as no bark, all bite. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So, how is it that you came to law?
That is a great question. It was on paper, it looks like a very linear journey. I went straight from undergrad to law school to working in law firms. But from like the personal, emotional side, it was anything but a straight and linear journey. I studied philosophy in undergrad and I got minors in like peace studies, gender women studies, and then I
Mhm.
think I was like one class short of a political science minor. So I had varied interests, just loved learning. And I went to write like a liberal arts college and I was going into my last year of school and I was like, I have no ability to earn money, which
Oh, what am I going to do with my philosophy degree?
yeah, and I hadn't thought about that. Like when I was choosing a major, I was like, what am I interested in? What do I want to learn more about? And philosophy was something that was super interesting to me. And I loved studying philosophy, had my mind blown like every day. It was
Mhm.
fascinating. And then I didn't know what to do. And I went to my parents and I was like, I'm like a year out from graduating. I have no idea what I want to do with my life, no idea even like what options are out there. And they're like, well, why don't you sit for the LSAT? Like, see how it goes. You love reading, you love writing. Right. Neither of my parents work in the law fields. And so they weren't fully like aware of everything that it entails, the personalities and whatnot. But I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll take the LSAT. I love school. I wanted to keep going to school. So I took the LSAT, that went well. And then my parents, they were like, all right, why don't you just try like applying to law school, see how that goes. And I was like, okay, like I didn't know what else was out there. I was like, sure, I'll apply law school. So I applied to law school. That went well. I ended up being really fortunate, was like given scholarships that made law school really affordable. And so at that point, I was like, this is too great of an opportunity to pass up. I went
Okay,
to
so this means you performed really, really well on the LSAT.
yes, yeah.
Okay, and so I just want people to know what this means. The LSAT is a incredibly difficult test. People take it multiple times. I took it twice and had to take a prep course in between. Like it is hard. So what that means is that you are brilliant.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
But objectively, that's what that means. Okay, you can keep going with your story.
Yeah. And so, and then, and I wanted to move to Arizona. I love Arizona. I lived here for a little bit when I was younger. So it's always been like a second home to me. And I always knew I wanted to come back to Arizona. I grew up in Minnesota. And so I had the opportunity to attend law school here. And it was a great financial option, a great option for a future career. And the thing that, like, when I went into law school, the idea was like, okay, this will create more options. Like, regardless of what I end up
Yeah.
doing, I'll be more educated and I'll have more things available to like as potential careers to do. So I went to law school, and in law school, I ended up taking the domestic violence law clinic, and that was for sure like the highlight of my law school time. Like I loved it. I remember being on the phone with clients, and I was like, I can't believe this like is something I'm doing for school, because it felt like so rewarding, so meaningful,
Yeah.
so like empowering to be able to help women, and mostly my clients were all women, but to be able to help women who were in a very vulnerable position leave abusive relationships and create better lives for themselves and better futures was amazing to. So I was so grateful that I got this education that enabled me to be able to help people. And I think that's what I love most about practicing law is building relationships with clients and getting to know people and getting to know like the you literally when people go through a divorce, their lives are turned inside out. You see everything. And so getting to know people on that very like intimate basis and developing a relationship with them and being able to help them through a really difficult time and being their partner on that journey is something that is so rewarding. And I, so looking back, my like route to law was very it was yeah, linear on paper, but very non-linear in terms of I didn't have a lot of direction or clarity in what I was doing. I just knew if I was like, okay, I'll work hard and eventually like something will fall into place, and it did. And I'm really grateful for the work I get to do now. And just as a side note, I actually was a yoga instructor in college.
Well, yeah, well, it's giving yoga. It's giving yoga, which is wonderful. I'm so happy that you have come to this place in this journey because you are just exceptional at what you do, exceptional with clients, exceptional in front of judges. Can you share a recent win that you're proud of?
Absolutely. Yeah. So earlier this week, I had a great win. I ended up filing a motion to compel. And basically, what that is like during the divorce process, both parties are required under the rules to exchange a lot of documents with each other, right? And sometimes you would be like, okay, well, they were married, they should have each other's tax returns, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you don't have access to the financial documents and you need the other side to produce them. And in this case, husband has been pretty evasive with
Mm.
producing documents. In particular, I'd say besides the house, the largest asset in the relationship is the retirement account, is the husband's retirement account. And he has just not produced it. We went to a mediation back in the spring, and at the mediation, he had agreed to produce like his all like investment, brokerage accounts, retirement accounts, tax returns, pay stubs, various financial documents. And he agreed to do that. And he produced some of the documents, but not all of them. So then we would send what's called a deficient disclosure letter, which is basically a letter saying, hey, you are supposed to give us these documents under the rules and you haven't. And we did that, I think, 2 or 3 times. We're being very patient. We're like, we need these documents, but we also know sometimes judges get annoyed when you file a motion to compel because
Right.
expect the parties and their lawyers to be able to do the disclosure process on their own. They're like, okay, you should be able to exchange documents between yourselves so you both have all the information and can make informed positions at trial or informed positions for settlement. And anyway, so long story short, dad has delayed, not produced documents he's supposed to produce. And I told his attorney, I was like, I have no choice. Like, I have to go to court. I have to ask for a motion to compel. If you're not going to produce these documents, they ignored my email. So I was like, okay, like waited, I gave it a couple days. And then I was like, all right, we're just filing this motion to compel. And that's basically asking the judge or issue an order, please, telling this person they need to give us these documents and also give us some attorney's fees because we spent a lot of time trying to get these documents. And that is totally unreasonable of husband to force my client to spend money trying to get documents that he's supposed to produce. So this week, so we filed our motion. The other side had an opportunity to file a response. They claim they produced what they're supposed to produce, but that he hasn't filed his 2023 taxes yet. And it was unreasonable for us to ask for documentation showing why he's not supposed to do them. And meanwhile, it's August. So he had 8 months to file, or I guess like 5 months or so to file taxes. And anyway, so the judge granted our motion to compel, which means she ordered dad to produce or husband to produce the documents within 30 days. And she gave my client an award of attorney's fees, which is a really big win because a lot of times you ask for attorney's fees and the judges will either say no, or they'll just be silent. They just don't address it in their orders, or they'll say,
Right.
oh, I'm going to wait until a final trial.
Right.
They just hope the parties will work it out between themselves. But
Right.
the judge, I think, was really annoyed that the case has been going on for some time and we made so many good faith attempts to get these documents. And so, yeah, she granted my client an award of attorney's fees, which was a major win. It was really exciting.
That's awesome. That is not easy to do. But I think one of the reasons you're so successful in court is you are thorough. So even when you tell stories to me right here, you're giving a lot of context. You're painting the entire picture. You're not just kind of like hitting the bullet points. You're selling the story. And I think that's one of the reasons that you're so successful.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
agree with that. Yes, I'm very, very detail oriented and a very comprehensive storyteller because I believe all those details have a role. And especially when you go to court, that a lot of times is the only time the judge is getting information. Like a ton of information is exchanged between the parties and between their attorneys during the divorce process. It's months upon months of emails, phone calls, meetings, but really the amount of time you get in court is super limited and you have a very short amount of time to convey a lot of information to the judge. And so I try to give as much context and detail to the judge. I had one case very early on, and it was for spousal maintenance. And in that case, I represented the wife and husband, and she had a great job, worked in healthcare. Husband was a like disabled veteran. He had limited VA disability income, and he wanted an award of spousal maintenance. So basically, like alimony. And what my client was like, what the heck? Like, I've worked so hard our whole marriage. I've supported him. And he betrayed me. Like, he cheated on me. He was a cross-dresser. Like,
Oh,
yeah. And she was like, he defrauded the government. Like, he's not disabled. Like, he can work. He worked up until the day he got the disability income. And so that was sort of like her story. And I was like, okay, like, the fact that he's a cross-dresser is not relevant whatsoever to whether he's entitled to an award of spousal maintenance. But I was like, people want to everyone wants to be heard. And this is the most important story of their life. It's their life. And so I always ask clients at the end of like when I'm questioning them in court, I'm like, is there anything else you want the judge to know today? And like that is their opportunity to tell the judge what's important to them. And she told the judge about how her husband basically is in her words, a con artist, and he conned the government into giving him disability income. He conned her into, marrying him, into thinking he was one way when he was actually a different way. And we got an amazing result. Like the judge did order her to pay some spousal maintenance, but it was super low. It was less than what we had offered in the settlement. And so it was a great win. And my client was super happy. And I think part of that is because she got the context of the relationship across to the judge, and he kind of understood what was going on in the context of the relationship.
Wow. So in that case, did the judge order below guidelines?
Yes. And we presented a lot of evidence. The parties had a lot of debt, and wife was being, even though right post day of service, so after he was served with the divorce papers, so she was still paying all the community debts. And so we were like, Judge, you have to give her credit. She's paying the mortgage, she's paying their credit card bill, she's paying, all these debts that they've accumulated over the course of a 20-year marriage. Like, she's solely responsible. He doesn't help at all with any of these bills. And so the judge ordered significantly below the guidelines.
Got it. Got it. Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
Um, Kathryn, I have enjoyed this podcast. I'm sure our listeners will. I'm sure people who are wondering, is Kathryn the right attorney for me? There's a lot of insight here. So you can get to know Kathryn here and decide. I personally, I would hire you.
Oh, thank you. I would hire you too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a wonderful day and thanks so much.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
Did you enjoy the discussion? If you loved getting to know the team member we highlighted, why not take the next step? Feel free to book a meeting with them using the link in the description box below. We'd love to connect with you.